Welcome to Ready Layer 1, a crypto podcast that focuses on the NEAR and Aurora ecosystems. And on this episode, we talk to the team over at Promisphere. Joe, what is Promisphere?
Yeah, so Promisphere, they're building out a few different things here, but really think of it as like a platform that is going to enable a Web3 gaming, easier access to Web3 gaming through they're having guilds, a Steam-like platform, as well as some other features that really start to bring all of the aspects of gaming into the Web3 space.
Absolutely. And so to me, when it broke down, it sort of seemed like they have the guild, which will be consist of a bunch of different gamers. They're gonna have the platform, which will be sort of a Steam but in Web3 world. And then they also have like a content area, which will educate and drive possibly like traffic and awareness. And then they're also launching an NFT.
Mm-hmm.
So how all four of those sort of combine, we talk about in this episode.
Yeah, and this is a great conversation. If you're interested in gaming, especially Web3 gaming, it's a great conversation of understanding like what is actually capable, and it really takes away from, it really gets away from the hype. It focuses on really what could actually come from Web3 type gaming, and so this is a great episode on that stuff.
Yeah, and one really surprising thing that was really enjoyable is how in tune Art and Stanley are in the whole Web3 space and the blockchain space, the nuances of NFTs, the nuances of gaming. It was some really cool conversations there, just going into sort of the altruistic philosophical stuff within blockchain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They have a great understanding of all this as well as being experts in the gaming space. So it's a really great conversation.
All right, we hope you all enjoy. To start this off, if you could just explain to our audience what your project is.
Right. So if you think about it, last year in Gamefi, when it first boomed, I think we're all quite familiar, if not scholarships. Back then, when we started, we realized that I had a lot of friends in the Philippines because when we play like games like Dota, Counter-Strike, I think we have a lot of Southeast Asian friends and the community is quite tight-knit. So Axie actually originated, at least the popularity of it originated from Philippines, and it trickled down into me in Discord one day. So it was like hey, bro, have you heard of this game? You could actually make money from this game. And then of course, me being having a huge interest in like GameFi. I mean, gaming and finance back then was suckered into this, right? I was like, okay, what's this new stuff I have to see? And then I got interested into Axie, and I was like, okay. And back then to me, it was a very foreign concept because I mean, if you're trading like ICOs and tokens back then, there was no need for MetaMask. And they were like, hey, you got to download this wallet. And then after this wallet, you got another wallet and stuff like that. And then, hey, after you download all the multiple wallets, okay, now you buy assets. And holy shit, each assets were like a couple of $1,000s. It's like, wait, how do you guys play this game? To start playing the game, I need to pay a couple $1,000s. Wait, I don't know how to do it. And that thought on my mind actually so-called created an impetus for me to enter the game. And then shortly after, when prices were a bit more settling down, my friends were like, hey, you should revisit it. And of course, doing some statistical check back then, hey, there was some money to be made at that point of time. So we started a small group of us. We mixed around with like our friends. Hey, some of our friends play this game really well. They generate really decent yield. And we're like, hey, we have the funds to try out. And so we funded a few of our friends to play. And that eventually became an interesting model because there is a investor in some sense. There are you farmers in some sense, if you're familiar with Axie. And then sort of you run into a business whereby when they generate you, there's like a profit sharing between the investor and the player. Now, that was fun in games. And then we realized that the economy was growing really big. There were over 1 million users at one point in time playing the game. And we thought that, hey, this might be the next big thing, right? And we wanted to create a platform that could simply automate it because we thought, hey, if this is viable, in a chance whereby more and more people come on board, people might want to actually try out these services or this game without the hassle of, the multiple wallets, the buying of teams and finding of players. It sounded of like a big issue there was, to enter the game, there was so much impedance. And we were like, hey, let's create something that could ease all of it. And that was how Promisphere came about. We created a platform that enabled the ease of access to all these games with like supposedly a click of a button. That's what we're building and striving towards. And that sort of led to the incorporation of the company, getting funding for building a platform that could sort of serve that need. And yeah, that's how Promisphere actually came to birth.
Okay, cool. So Promisphere is a platform that allows almost like a esports sponsorship as well as one part of it where you can help people. Yes. So people who might not be able to play, you could sponsor them, they could play, and it could kind of work that way.
Right. And also for people who they don't want to go through the hassle of understanding like what MetaMask is, what Ronin is, what teams to buy or who to find. We sort of serve that whole pipeline in some sense. But people hey, just put in this amount of money. We would settle the conversion on and off ramp for you. We would find and buy the right teams for you and eventually find the right player, sort of the whole thing in one package, right? So it sort of increases the adoption because I think most people are afraid. It's like, oh my God, so much things to do. Is it even worth the time? Right?
Yeah.
And we were trying to solve for that essentially.
So people who want a game can just game and then you guys can handle the other parts as well.
Exactly. Or people who wanted to just put money and sponsor someone could just put money and not have to go through all the hassle. Both ends of the party.
I like that.
I think people who want to play can just play is exactly where we'll put it at. Generally, I mean, this is just a fun fact, right? Stanley is the dreamer of the team. He's the one that connects people and puts things together. I'm kind of the asshole who puts things into perspective, whether he likes it or not. And we have that kind of dynamic going on, right? But I think if you ask what Promisphere is, it is a bunch of gamers with business experience, with tech experience, with various talents, right, within our community. And what we're trying to do is we believe that blockchain can have very, very meaningful applications for the future of gaming. Okay, so we can talk about those applications later on, but focus on that first, right? But the problem is there are a lot of short-term distractions. And I think you guys will be more familiar with similar effects in the crypto space with DeFi. People are trying to work out the right model. What we hope to do is to build things like this platform that we're talking about and other projects like Project Arcana, which will move the space towards more meaningful adoption and help to weed out the bad projects. So that over time, by helping the space, of course, we need to monetize somehow in the long term. Ideally, we become that keystone player and the trusted, in a way, the launcher, the platform to go to for access to these well-curated games. That's what we're trying to do right now.
I think there's a very big importance, especially in such a new space, of being able to trust someone or having a curation for, because there's going to be this wave, you can feel it, this wave of GameFi or gaming on Web3 is coming, and having somebody with expertise curate that's, I think, really going to be essential.
Do you guys have something that you would compare it to in the current gaming situation? Is it like a Steam kind of platform that you're trying to get to where, I have one account, I can play multiple games, my credit card is tied to all of this. Is it the same concept there?
Joe, yeah. Precisely, right? So our long-term vision for sure is to try and be the Steam equivalent in blockchain gaming.
Got it.
And when we talk about that, we say long-term and I mean pretty long-term because there are a number of challenges to overcome, right? Today, for Steam to onboard games, they already have the huge business size to do it, number one.
Sure.
Two is they do not have to deal with the issue of cross-chain compatibility, right? Because a lot of the blockchain games, they choose which chain to develop on for a mix of reasons, of course. I think some of them have wonderful developers who look at the blockchain trilemma in certain ways, right? Because if you look at gaming, what kind of solution suits it the most? It might differ. For example, you might say within the blockchain trilemma for gaming, right? If it's on-chain, then things like efficiency and security are very important, but doesn't need to be scalable if it's like kind of an indie game and I don't get big. Vice versa for if I want it for enacting transactions of game assets, then security and scale becomes very important. But unlike DeFi, you wouldn't expect instantaneous transactions. So some games are thinking about that. They choose a chain based on that. But oftentimes, as a matter of fact, and I don't think we blame them for doing this, the games choose their chain to develop on based on who will fund them. Now, that creates a problem for gamers, right? Can you imagine a world where we have blockchain games coming in, the good ones eventually? You just want to play some games, but you have to maintain 5, 6, 7 different hot wallets just to be able to play games. I think that is frustrating as a gamer. And that's something that we like to solve for longer term.
With that in mind, and because you're trying to merge this, is, so NEAR Big Brain came to us and to introduce you guys, and we're more focused on NEAR. Are you leveraging one particular chain to then convert everything into, or how is this kind of all working for you guys?
Right. So short-term wise, I think it will be more brokered solutions with the game partners. Because if you think about access, it doesn't need to be everything on chain, right? For example.
Sure.
In a sense, if you trust that we can read your wallet and and there is faith in that, right? Then you can enable the access on your end as the game developer or the game studio. But longer term, it will literally be about having a bunch of great engineers figure out a cross-chain wallet solution that can connect. Now, that may have limited permissions because, again, you don't want to ruin the blockchain security, right? Let's say I can transact something that's ETH or Solana, everything on the same wallet. I think that's an issue. But it could just be a read and accept kind of system. Now, that I think we are not the best people to answer, because Stan and I were not deep into software engineering, to be completely frank. Our CTO might be able to answer that better, but he's not around today. Yeah, but that's the kind of the long-term play. But I think, I don't know if you know, but there has been some governments, I wouldn't name out who, because not everyone knows about this, who try to develop things like SME logistics platform, okay, for and using the blockchain. And the first thing that, the first reaction we have when we hear these kind of things is why, right? The biggest barrier to why SMEs are not working together with each other, like sourcing, supplying, and they can't find each other is not because it's not on the blockchain. I think that you're using a bazooka to kill a cockroach, right? The biggest problem is understanding that there are other players out there and wanting or not to work with them. In Singapore, we have a word, right? We're from Singapore. It's a Chinese, it's like a Hokkien word, it stands like Tao Gei. So Tao Gei describes the typical old businessman or businesswoman who has more stuck-up ways of doing things. They like things their way. I was like, I don't want to work with this guy means I don't want to work with it. That's actually the bigger barrier, right? Not so much the technology. So similar for us, we understand that you don't necessarily have to have an on-chain solution off the bat. That could be a longer-term development, which takes time to figure out. But short-term, it's more about brokering that relationship with meaningful partners.
Promisphere, I'm looking at your website, and there's a couple areas. There's the guild, the platform, the content house, and the thought leadership. So the guild is the collection of all the gamers and also people maybe supporting the gamers, correct? That we just discussed earlier.
Correct.
And then the platform is just the partnerships that you're going to be hopefully making across with it might be multi-chain and maybe not chain agnostic, but multi-chain.
To understand why there is a separate component is because we actually originated as a guild, whereby we had about 1,000 players back then. The reason for it and why it still exists is because if we want to run a successful platform, we must first also understand the games itself. We cannot be launching like, hey, list on our platform and we list it to the retail market and end up, poof, the game has some issues or some bugs or some bad contracts, right? We first have to test it ourselves. And what better way to test it ourselves than to have our actual players running on the ground and playing around, fiddling with it, so we can understand the issues, give the games the first insights as a player before we even launch it to the retail. So think of the guild as like our test front, whereby we ensure or at least do a first round of quality check before we open it up onto the platform. That's why it's a separation. The guild also enables us to do like some kind of basic financial so-called predictions. So when we list on a platform, we can say, hey, based on a sample size of like 100 players, what is your expected yield return, etc. At least that was the idea we wanted to go with.
Yeah. So think of it like an expedition into games to understand them before we even list it. Because if we list anyhow, then the reputational damage is kind of on our end, right? But yeah, I mean, the next thing to know though is that this is also part of our attempt longer term to free up the guild and scholarship model system. So we're in contact with a number of guilds, and the situation now is, of course, there are good guilds and bad guilds, and then things in the middle, right? Can't blame anyone. They're just trying to make their money. But the situation now is that a lot of scholars have left a lot of guilds, right? We face the same situation, and that's because people look at it as a way to make money while playing, right? I think longer term, when we move towards better quality blockchain games, which do not have an overemphasis on X to earn, and maybe it's X and earn, right? So there's a nuance difference, right? Like if the end objective is to earn, it's very different from, hey, I'm enjoying this game, and on top of that, I could get $2-3 a month, right? Why not? So if you look at Steppen, right, versus Sweatcoin, I think that's quite telling in terms of this narrative between X to earn and X and earn. Interesting projects to check out if you guys have the time. That is one comparison that we think is likely to occur more and more within blockchain gaming. That's a good example. And by then, things will change. So then your question might be, what is Stanley talking about in terms of our platform being able to, come in and people play for it and all that? Our original plan was to have the most transparent system. Okay, because the fact is some other guilds build similar platforms where they say one of two models, right? One is, hey, give me X dollars, let's say $100, and you will have a share of the next team I create. And every month I promise you APY of 5%, 6%, 7%. That's the first model. The second model is fractionalized or partial ownership. Oh, sorry, that's the first one, fractionalized ownership. The second model that we tend to see is like staking. So they say, hey, you have this XC asset, or whatever game, LPS battle, put it on our platform, stake it, we'll give you rewards. And then when you ask, like, where's the reward coming from? How come it's 6-7%? You say, oh yeah, it's because we take the assets, form it into a team, and we play it and we generate yield.
Okay.
But let me tell you this: if you go and look at the early on the past few months, even when it was not that bad, let's say XC, the top ranked players, right, the top 20 rank, you will often see a PRO beside some of their names. That's because they're from our guild, which it's quite stupid that we name it PRO because people think it just means they're pro, right? But
yeah,
but it's for prominence, Promisphere. But my point is, I can tell you that at those points when we're seeing those models, 6-7% APR is just not possible with the earning rate. So where's the 6-7% really coming from? Well, not to point fingers or anything, but we suspect it might be Ponzi's. And we're like, okay, how do we solve for that? Well, full transparency. So on our platform, you can see exactly what you own. You know exactly what's being generated. And you can revoke the access rights of the people playing for you anytime you want and redistribute it, right? So it's kind of custodian, but fully transparent. You know exactly what you have. But why did we do that if our long-term goal was to be, well, a launcher, essentially, like a library for games? It's very simple, right? Like I said, you need to broker that relationship with the game partners. And two things. One is they want more people into their games right now. So even the good ones who are not trying to run. So, okay, we provide for that because some of them have the X to earn model. The other thing is, it's very hard for us to go to games and say, please work with us, be on our platform where we have absolutely nothing. So that was actually our initial attempt to garner a community of users big enough within the platform to use as leverage to start these conversations. So that was our original plan. Right. And then eventually when we can onboard some of these games, have the access systems, so on and so forth, we move towards, and we were fundamentally of the belief that the space will move away from X to earn anyway. Then we'll move towards just as a launcher when we solve the problem. Then eventually we build like a cross-chain wallet, a proper technical solution.
All right. So Joe, I'm just kind of breaking. Thank you guys. I'm starting to understand this now. So you've got the guild was called Prominence, or is called Prominence. And then Promisphere is the overarching umbrella that has the guild within it. And then there's the platform, which eventually will be for like the Steam, where there will be games on it that the guild, hopefully at that point, can help kind of vet. And then I noticed you got the content house. Is that going to be leveraged for just awareness and marketing and stuff like that, education, things like that? So you kind of have the pipeline in Web3, sort of the people, the players, the games, and also a way to market it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
and
cool.
to educate people on what are the best cases. So yeah, like you were saying, you were checking out our YouTube channel and all that, right? And then we post things like the fireside chat, what it's like to be in Web3 and so on. I think that's a very small wing, actually. I mean, we put it up there as a structure because things look very neat, right? But yeah, it does two things. One, it spreads our opinion on Web3 out there. Again, we want to try and improve the space. The other thing it does is for some of our game partners, they would like exposure, let's say through AMAs, or they want us to host tournaments with them. And some of these conversations, I think in the end, they decide not to because, well, crypto is in bear market now. People don't want to spend a single cent. And that's fine, right? We can save that for later. Sure. And oftentimes what we do is the relationship with broker with them, we say, you don't have to pay a cent, in fact. So which is why we don't understand why they back out. But we say, just give us like maybe 5-10 game assets. And we're not going to sell it. It's not for our financial gain. We literally will airdrop it for free to our community, people who use the platform in the future, so that they can start playing these games, right? So you have a few experimental users coming in, people try it out. Because I have heard a few comments by now, right? Things like, oh, big time, XC, such ugly games. And I say, are you kidding me? This is in development for how long only, and with how big a team, right? You compare to indie games that are well celebrated, like Among Us, Papers, Please, Hollow Knight, right? They are actually of better graphical quality. And I think on top of that, these guys have to deal with a whole new system, which is blockchain. Yeah. So I think there are good blockchain games out there. But if you tell me, would you play XC, let's say on mobile games? if you tell me, well, you need to spend $1,000 to buy a team to play, I'll say no, hell no. $60,
Same.
probably
Yeah.
not. But if you tell me it's like $5 or it's free, right? And there's some in-game items out there, like, yeah, probably. And if I can earn 50 cents every month for doing it, why not? It seems like a good deal. Something to burn time and earn money while I'm on the bus, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the situation where ideally, and I hope, blockchain gaming moves towards. And then we can enact some of the real benefits, right? Like democratize asset ownership and all that, which Stanley is very passionate about. I can let him tell you about it.
One of the biggest reasons why we separated the business into multiple wings is because I think there are a few challenges that we are trying to solve completely. On the platform end, I think it's more of a technological area whereby if we can solve for the ease of access, definitely we expect more people to come on board. But the truth is, more than just technology, I think we need to solve for adoption in a different way.
Yeah.
And adoption can come in multiple ways. One is which education, like your podcast, you're educating people. When people listen again, new insights, etc. What we aspire and aim to do is to show that it's not all that difficult, it's not all that challenging, and it's not all scams. There are really good people developing in the space, whether it's your podcast, you guys, whether it's Big Brains, whether it's us. I think there are good people in the space. And what better way to show that who we are rather than on a video on YouTube, and we can talk and interact with our community and they can hear our insights. I think people are getting smarter every day.
Yep.
People are also getting more aware of the space every day. Now rugs are being like very easily ironed out. There's communities or alpha groups calling out, hey, this is a scam, don't enter it, don't click in, don't mint, etc. And the more these happen, of course, we move further away from nascency, but of course, a more secure place. That's what the media wing is for. The other reason about democratized assets, which is what Arthur mentioned, is actually like a long-term passion of mine. So this passion is probably too idealistic and too altruistic to be true.
Oh
But
no, let's
in
bring the
a-
I love those. Those are the best kind. Let's hear it.
Oh no. So it's funny, but
down with the oppressors.
yes.
New
Well,
world order.
it is a long-term dream that I have. So I've been playing many games in my life, most of them being MMORPGs, right?
Mhm.
And the one thing that MMOs have given me is the ability to be someone bigger in the game. So not like the top, right? I'm not trying to talk about that, but being bigger is being able to lead a community and give opportunities to people in the games where they weren't possible before. And in a simple example in a game is if this guy is really low level, I would be able to coach and guide him and eventually bring him on board the team and go somewhere. In the real world, though, it's a lot harder. Like if I were to try and create a funnel in some means of access from the first world countries to like developing countries, it's not that simple, right? And I saw GameFi as one of the enablers back then. It sort of serves its purpose, but of course in a non-sustainable manner. But it gave me a glimpse of hope. There was something or someone who could innovate such a model. I mean, still very early in the sense, but maybe in the later on stages, there might be people who could solve for that model, especially because there's a lot of hidden talents in developing countries that we have been able to work with and are very fortunate to have as friends. So yeah, that's one of the dreams I have, because I do have a lot of friends in Southeast Asia all around, and they come from more or less fortunate families. That of course Web3 actually creates a lot of jobs for them. There's a lot of search and demand for art talent, creative talent, game talent, etc. And we want the best for them, or I personally do at least. So that is like the altruistic dream I have, and hopefully we can build something towards it.
I have the same like that like the end goal, the hope of like the Web3 or crypto space is that like I'm hoping for the decentralization of profits and the ability for people to decentralize the wealth is kind of that's my hope in the dream, So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Does Joe share that sentiment as well?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of like what we started, when we got into crypto, and like, we were talking a lot of different things of like how we were both kind of looking for ways to say, hey, is there something that helps people actually get equal footing isn't the right term, but the ability to actually take a step that normally they wouldn't be able to take. And crypto clearly has already started to open doors for people that would never have certain opportunities, whether it's actually work or whether it's something as simple as being able to like transmit money, whether it's from family members, to be able to have a bank account like type of system that wasn't there before. And so I think all of these things are really important. But what is really interesting to me about what you guys are doing, especially with the game side of it, though, is that like, you know, the gaming culture is so pervasive across the world in some form, right? Like it's just it's everywhere. And the ability to all of a sudden allow almost anyone to start to possibly earn and make money and be part of something is really, really interesting because again, takes away from the thing of like you have to be in a certain echelon before this is, you know, worthwhile to you. And this starts to give you that.
Exactly, right. Like now there's only two major types of people who can make great money by playing games, right? One is you have an extremely entertaining personality, right? And then you become a streamer, right?
Right.
The other way is if you're a pro gamer, and we know a few, right? And even amongst the pro gamers, there are those who are not good enough and they're kind of washed out now, and you know it's difficult, right? They still have a legacy, but they can't go and win the top tournaments and make a living out of it anymore. So it's difficult. But so many people in gaming, or at least what we've seen, have been inspired to become more than just gamers, right? We've seen people who, like, you would know, you know, in the gaming industry, one of the most notorious things is that engineers are the most underpaid compared to all other software engineers, right? Why is that? Because so many people want to be game software engineers. And why? Because many of them got into engineering inspired by gaming from their past, right? And then if you look at YouTube, some of the influencers out there, so many of them, gamers, are the ones who were inspired to do art and they became good at it, music, right, story writing and so on. And I think it's a beautiful thing. What is the difficult part though? Like what Joe said, I mean, for specifically to crypto and finance, I might have some kind of more middle ground rather than overly optimistic views about it. Maybe simply because I come from banking, so I'm like a negative Nancy when it comes to that. Although I do dream of the idealistic world where, you know, where it's like power to the people. But I think for gaming, it's more clear cut in a way, or rather, what's meaningful is more clear cut, which is today that already exists, right? You think about it. Let's say we talk about Counter-Strike. One of the most expensive transactions that ever took place, I think it was more than 250,000 US dollars, was of a AWP sniper skin that has, I think, 3 blue stickers on it. I don't remember the exact name. That's $250,000 sale. And then there's another one, which is a knife that was valued at US $1.3 million because someone made an offer. But of course, that transaction never took place, so we can't claim that it's the most valuable item. But then the question is, why didn't that transaction take place? Well, because if you want to sell anything on Counter-Strike on Steam and you want it for real money instead of Steam credits, you need to arrange for a third party to handle the transaction. So you send it to their account and they send it over and then they pass you the money, right? And oftentimes, well, they run away with both the money and the item. Okay. So it's not set up in the right way. If you look at another popular game, let's say League of Legends, if you want to sell skins, right? Some skins out there, the legacy skins, they're worth hundreds of dollars. But if you want to sell a single skin, you have to sell your whole account. I take issue with that, right? I don't think, you know, because when you play the game as a player, can you imagine playing a game of Dota or playing an MMORPG and there's like 6 people there? It's a pretty shit game, right? So as the player, by literally physically being within the game, especially when it's multiplayer and it's online, you're bringing value to the game. You're creating part of the value of the game, which attracts other players, which then brings in revenue for the company. And oftentimes these skins, you have paid for it. You spend real money. Why is the value then afterwards locked up by this old defunct systems and infrastructure, which doesn't allow you to really own your value and then unlock it? That's a problem, right? So yeah, one of the potentials of blockchain technologies is if everything is on chain. Look, you don't need blockchain to solve it, right? You can just say, hey, I'm like a super altruistic game studio. Go at it, man. Everyone owns their own shit and you can sell it and all that, right? That kind of happened with Diablo 3, where they had the marketplace. But I think they had to change it for different reasons. That was kind of an economic problem. But the problem with that is that there is no guarantee, right? Who's going to trust that the devs, under the potential of much more money to be made, one day just decides, okay, we're going to shut down this system and it's a closed loop again. So I think that's one of the brilliant things that blockchain can bring to gaming, right? Really, the word then here is democratization of asset ownership in a secure way that enables transactions. That's one of the beautiful things we look forward to and hope will come to be.
Yeah, you've actually just so in past episodes, Joe and I talk and we get philosophical sometimes. And I've constantly been like hitting this point of the value of something. Like we've never been able to quantify the value of users, right? We know what it costs. Like from a marketing standpoint, we spend lots of money in marketing to try to acquire users, but the user gets none of that value. And if a game has 1 million users, let's just say just random number, those users have a value to them. And normally it would all go to the game, but now blockchain allows, it kind of opens up a way for people to value the user. And I like that. And I think the way you just described it within a game, that the players in a game bring value to the game and they can get some of that value. I like that. I'm just starting to put that together, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I was not expecting to go here with this, and that's great.
No,
so
I mean the easy thing for us is you guys are dealing with a much bigger picture, right? Like it's kind of a social thing, right? Finance, economy, and all that. That's on the crypto level and DeFi and all that.
Yeah.
The good thing for us is it's easier to contextualize because we're dealing specifically with gaming, right? And gaming, it's quite clear the interactions between the player, the game, the developers, the bigger ecosystem of studios, and so on and so forth. So there's always these interactions, right? And it's not rare that you hear of studios getting in fights with their developers, right? Or publishers getting into fights with their studios. Right?
Sure.
And you can kind of feel the tension, right? Because one is profit driven, one is creative driven, right? So
yeah, I was gonna bring up. I'm glad you touched on this stuff, especially around some of the ownership pieces of it, because one of the things I've noticed over the years, especially in gaming, is like, there is pushback around, NFTs for in-game assets because people worry about the speculation piece and people worry about getting priced out of things. But then there's the other side, I think, of what you just brought up here, is that the gaming world is messy. And there is this weird thing of the development studios and publishers, and people don't understand that. Like one of the big ones, if people who are just even casually around gaming might have heard, is like some of the infighting with like the Call of Duty games and their publishers, and those became problems of like where does your account sit? And like you said, like maybe I spent, let's say, even $500 on different assets, and now the version 2 comes out, it's a different publisher, and they shut something off. Like those
like
are the
FIFA,
pieces.
right?
Yeah,
it's like I have Messi in the 01, and then now where's my $3,000 Messi?
Exactly. And so how do you get that message out to people of like these type of things, of like, it's not about the speculation of NFTs, and it's not about that, like, oh yeah, there is another way to do it. Like you said, blockchain isn't always the best fit. But in this case, though, if you show these examples, like how do you get that message to people?
I think the first thing is conversations like this. I think Stan is big on going out to events and communities, especially NFT communities, and meeting people, and that's part of I guess his own way of. I mean, let's be honest, okay? A lot of NFTs out there are kind of shell projects. Right?
Oh, maybe, don't get me started. Ponzi's everywhere.
Yeah. So maybe some of their founders truly believe in it. I mean, power to them. They should grow some brains, but. Generally, I don't blame the gaming community, and I mean I don't have the right to blame, right, for being very wary, I would say, right, of NFTs and crypto. If you look at like influencers and top gamers and all that, they avoid it like it's the plague, and for good reason, because the general situation now, when it's like good majority, it's a very questionable place, but this is a nascent space, and here's what I say to them, right, if they're listening. If you look at the adoption of paper currency that you trust so much in your pockets right now, you know how it started? It started with literally blacksmiths taking people's gold and saying, hey, here's a piece of paper that says, I have 2 pounds of gold and it's in my storage. And that's the beautiful story of how the banking system started, right? But here's the part that a lot of people don't remember, or it's not said, because that's not important to the main story, but it is important for the crypto story. And this is the thing. Did you think that when the first blacksmith did it, everyone trusted him? It's like, hey man, hey, thanks Joe, thanks for keeping my gold, right? And then I take this piece of gold paper and I go to Jared and say, hey man, Joe has my gold, just take this piece of paper. You trust this piece of paper, man. Go to him, he'll give it a go. So I'm very sure, at the start of things, a lot of people doubted this. A lot of people probably were forging papers. A lot of blacksmiths were doing Ponzi's and running away. But over time, systems emerge and it stabilizes. And we're kind of in that nascent space for this blockchain technology right now. And you can't blame people for questioning. I think it's very natural, right? You want to protect yourself. But I think over time, especially with repeated cases of bear markets, and you see people running away and disappearing to Dubai, some of them from Singapore, it weeds out the bad actors, right? So like it or not, there's going to be some pockets burned in order for us to weed out all these bad things. But I think systematically, the world tends to improve with time, right? Even in gaming, you went from simple skin sale models into loot boxes, and there was a huge blowback. And now we reach a kind of a middle ground place where it's battle passes. That's the most common practice now, right? Where you have to pay, but you get rewarded for playing the game longer, and then you unlock rewards. And then I think that's a better selling place. And that evolution took many years, right? It was quite long before we got here. So I'm optimistic. I hope that things get better. I think it will. But I would say these kind of conversations are important in letting people understand that, yes, it's dangerous, but it's in uncharted territory where we find opportunities. And after that, we can turn those opportunities into realized potential and value.
Absolutely. And the reason we're doing this podcast too is because the last few years of crypto have been a lot of heavy speculation. Bitcoin goes up, everything, like people just look at crypto as like one big space, where we hope to bring a more nuanced conversation, because it's about nuances. And I hope the next 5 years, it's about these kind of conversations where it's like, okay, there are some NFTs that are rugs, scams, soft rugs, anything, but there's also really talented people creating new systems that will open up a whole new ecosystem. I do hope that for the next 5 years, we start going that way after this bear market.
I have an interesting take on this. So you mentioned that, I mean, Arthur and I still agree with you, and we share that the same consensus that all NFTs, or most NFTs, a lot of them are Ponzi's, from at least those that we are aware of. But we fail to realize this one thing: like a lot of people avoid NFTs like it's play, right? But technically, who put them in power to become scams in the first place? It's actually the consumers themselves. Today, if I were to launch an NFT project and I launch a random art project outside, and the same system, right? I just say, hey, buy this art piece or buy this NFT regardless it is, and you don't hold me accountable for it. I'm undoxable online. It's the same thing. NFT is the medium that's used, but people don't realize that. They just, everything NFT is a scam. But that's not true. You could sign a physical contract in a studio for them to produce an NFT for you and pay for that. And you know that guy, that's a legal contract. But the reason why I think these are so rampant is because people are allowing it. And they can't fault these projects directly. I mean, they are definitely the ones that are evil, malicious in mind. But we as the consumers have the power to actually control and contain that. So I want to relate to like a gaming example. If today you are playing a traditional game, doesn't matter which one it is, right? What is stopping a developer from printing unlimited currency and eventually, like, let's say if 100 gold is worth $100, what is stopping the developers from printing like 1 billion gold and selling for $1 billion without your knowledge? Because there is no blockchain. There is no way you would be able to analyze and find out this, right? But even though blockchain has better technology that could prevent this, not say prevent it in some sense, but at least if the contract is already written and there's a definite amount of currency, they can't mess around with that kind of system. This might actually be a better use case of blockchain technology. It's like, hey, at least we know the developers can't do stuff like that, right? Whereas in the traditional world, you could. But why are not people realizing the advantages but looking at the bad stuff that has happened? It's because their eyes are focused on the things they want to focus on. And I think this message has to go out like, they have to view blockchain as a technology, not as a means of like printing money, getting rich quickly. I think these are things of the past that until we really move on and get over, we will continuously still be in that trap. The consumers will, at least for the next period, I think still be in that trap. So consumers of this, I hope you're watching, but note that if you ever lose money in a rug, it is like ultimately your own due diligence and you did your own financial research before you entered and
or rather you
allowed
didn't
it to
do it,
happen.
right? Oftentimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a ton of information online. There's a ton of legit people to find online. Follow the right sources. I'm not guaranteeing you will succeed or like take all the risks or don't take any risks, but at least have a calculated risk rather than go full ape ham degen mode like a lot of people do these days that I know of.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Honestly, when Stan talked about that, right? When I lose money, and there's been a few projects I put money in. I think at one point a friend told me about a node project. He thinks it's legit, but I read it. It's like, seems interesting. Of course, we know nodes now are very much cyclical kind of financial generation projects, right? And it's a matter when they run. When I lose money off of this, I just go, okay, I should have read better. I should have thought about it more, right? It sucks that I lost money, sure, but the how do I put it? The blame is on me. But the good thing then is next time I'm more aware and I can vote with my wallet, right? And one great thing about gaming is there's a lot of vigilante justice out there, like mob justice. You know, before that, Jared was mentioning or was it Joe? Sorry, I forget. But one of you were mentioning the backlash from gamers. I think you might be referring to Ubisoft, right? Trying to launch the NFT marketplace, and then there's a whole hoopla about it.
Yep.
See, that's the beautiful thing. When you have a consumer base that's more aware, then you have this kind of forces. You guys know what Porter's Diamond is? It's like a strategic framework, right? That explains what creates for highly competent industries. So this is like industry level research. And one of the factors is what's called demand forces. Okay. And what I mean by demand forces is basically if your target market of consumers are complicated people and understand the product, understand the space, and demanding, literally demanding, then you end up with a much more powerful industry. So for example, in Asia, typically Asians would know some of the better makeup brands or skincare brands all come from Korea. And the reason they come from Korea, a big part of it is because, well, Koreans are very particular about their makeup, about their skincare products, and so on. So it forces the industries to be competitive in that aspect. And I think gamers are very similar, right? Gamers are pretty much all about mob justice. Right? You do some shit thing, and then people are going to go on Steam and downvote you to hell and overwhelmingly negative, talk all sorts of shit in the forums and all that. And this kind of backlash. So what did Ubisoft do wrong? Well, I think it was for the game, was it Ghost Recon or something? One of the Tom Clancy games, right? And all they did was they took existing assets essentially, and it was like, "Hey guys, it's NFTs now, baby." It's like, and what's so NFT, what's so non-fungible about it? It's like, all right, man. In the past, it was a helmet. Now it has number 1 on it. Check it out.
Right.
And the next one is number 2. Awesome.
Right.
Like, what the fuck is that, man?
Right.
You know what I mean? So this is, look, I don't think, maybe Ubisoft wasn't trying to be an ass. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, right? So again, coming from corporate, I understand that sometimes the guys with the suit don't know what's really going on the ground. They don't have the time to figure out all these technologies and all that. So maybe it was a misplaced decision. But, well, the good thing is the gamer community called them out for it, right? It shut it down. And hopefully we take that as a learning lesson towards how can we apply blockchain technology better in gaming and not just try to shove it in, right? Needlessly.
There's so much here. I mean, there's so many great points I kind of want to get into, but for, I guess your guys' perception of not just maybe the NFT piece of it, but do you, I guess I'm sure I know you see the potential of it, but like, where do micropayments fit into all of this? Like, because obviously that's something you can't do with fiat, right? Like I can't give my credit card and do micropayments. And, how does that fit into the larger gaming model?
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by micropayments? Do you mean
Sure.
within games, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, within games, right? So, instead of actually having to, so a lot of times in games, right, I have to buy X number of tokens ahead of time, and then I have like in-game tokens, where some of these now they're talking about being able to actually do, use actual, crypto tokens as part of that. So you're using like, money essentially to do different activities, but because you can fractionalize it so much that you can get into these really small micropayments. Is that something that adds just unnecessary complexity, or is that an actual piece of the gaming?
So you mean like, because if you look at crypto, you can literally go down up to like 16 decimal place or any amount that you want, and that gets really complicated in games, right? So yeah. I think maybe better for me to answer this because I used to play EVE Online quite a bit. I think EVE Online is a great example of it. So when you look at game economies as a start, before I even get to handling the multiple decimal places within crypto, EVE Online, if I'm not wrong, right, has a team of PhDs in economics to handle the economy within the game. Because EVE Online has a situation where you have to spend a lot of money if you want your ships to be good and you want to build up alliance and all that, right? And part of what keeps players coming back is obviously, say at the same time in the game, when you do activities, it generates money, right? It generates in-game money, like you mine asteroids and you sell it, so on and so forth. So how do you keep the balance of the whole economy just doesn't implode upon itself with excessive money coming out? I mean, this is a problem almost every MMORPG faces. If you heard of Maple's story, at one point going in, having 1 million billion mesos with in-game currency was common, right? So it's Zimbabwe up in there, Venezuela,
Yeah.
So terrible situation. And it gets to a ridiculous point. And I think that's part of why EVE Online invested so much in having literal doctors in economics to figure out where to create gold sinks and faucets to create and destroy currency. So the complexity of crypto then and the benefit of it. So it's kind of an opportunity, right? In Chinese, we have a saying, 危机. That's crisis in Chinese. So, but the thing is, the 危机, the second word, right? 机 is also 机会. And 机会 in Chinese is opportunity. So if you think about it, it's like in crisis lies opportunity. So the complexity of crypto is that you need to have a two-way street. So imagine if EVE Online wants it to be a token, it must be two-way, right? Then the balancing of economics needs to have, I don't know, 20,000 PhDs in economics instead of just a few. But the opportunity in it is that it makes the game much more appealing if you can make that back and forth, right? There are other games which have tried it. I think Entropia Universe is one of it, where you can actually cash in both ways and out. That player base is not that popular anymore. I think they all came out around the same time, like 2008. So it is challenging, but in terms of handling the decimal points within crypto, I think it's not that difficult, right? Like fork it, create your own crypto, and remove the decimal points, right? Make it sensible. I think that's one quick and dirty way to kill it and handle it. But I can't say for sure because we're not really great at economics or game developers to begin with. I think experimental processes will be necessary. The next thing, though, I think, is that games need to have some restrictions. Okay, so especially when it comes to crypto, becomes more sensitive because it could be real money on the line. Whereas in the past, you could have, mobs keep generating X amount. Every time you kill a slime, for example, 5 gold comes out or 5 crypto come out. Maybe these games need to have more dynamic drop systems just to make sure things don't get overinflated. For example, that could be something they do. I don't know. But a point is, it cannot be a free-for-all situation because the irony is once your game gets big and too many people come in, it's going to over-generate, right? And which crypto out there just has a huge exponential vesting system and it just dumps onto the market one shot? I think that would be a terrible situation for the token. So that's one thing to think about. Another very quick and dirty solution is, well, don't have a crypto for the game. Make use of blockchain technology for the assets within the game, but don't tie your in-game economy to any cryptocurrency. So that's another way to just kind of sidestep the complication entirely. Maybe some might say, yeah, it becomes less attractive to people to come into the game. I don't think that's a problem if you have a great game to begin with. A great game doesn't pull people in because of crypto. Great game pulls people in because of gameplay.
I mean, just to finish that point, I mean, I love that approach to it, of the sense that like the crypto doesn't have to be the solver for everything. And it doesn't have to be all throughout the whole entire thing, because where I'm seeing pushback from the non-crypto crowd in relation to gaming is that it's that fear of like the crypto invades every part of the game, and now it just becomes this like financial free-for-all. And like you said, whether it becomes, almost Ponzi-ish or a token dump or whatever, and now it scares people off. But the approach of like, let's build the best game and better serve parts of it through the blockchain is, I think, a smarter approach, probably long term.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just like I would say our thesis to it. Of course, we might be very wrong, right? But we look at blockchain. We like to think of it as a blockchain community rather than just crypto or GameFi, because I think we're all in this together, right? And we're all under the umbrella of blockchain. Blockchain is like a toolbox. And there's a lot of tools in it, right? DeFi, crypto, GameFi, whatever it is, all these are tools. And, you don't reach for a hammer to screw a screw, right? It works, but it may not be the best fit, for example. So
right.
I think people in the space like us and our peers in game development need to be very aware of this, right? Sometimes you just can't solve the problem that way. Then use the right tools.
Nice. Sorry. Go first.
Yeah. You can even think about it this way. Like, while it may seem like common sense to us, having like the best UI UX for games is definitely, or any kind of platform, any kind of interaction is definitely the most ideal. Some projects still take pride in being fully on chain. And what that means is that every single interaction, you have to pay gas fees. I have no idea where the idea of having the worst UI UX because it's on chain sells the best, but there are some projects that take pride in it. And it queers me, right? Like imagine if I'm playing a game and to wear an item, I need to pay gas fees. To unequip an item, I need to pay gas fees. To upgrade an item, I need to pay gas fees. To see the result of that upgrade, I need to pay gas fees. That's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to play that game. No matter how good it is, if I have to pay gas fees to walk into a map, I'm not playing it anymore. And
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. No,
it's
even
weird
if
because
even if it's a great game and a gas fee is like not 5 cents or something,
Yeah.
you're just playing approved MetaMask simulator, not a game.
Approved MetaMask.
yeah,
simulator,
exactly. It's and I've seen like some projects still do that for some reason. No matter where it is, like even if it's on Solana, even if it's when on cheaper chains, it just spoils the whole experience. Like not every single thing needs to be on chain. Some things can be off chain, right? And you can reconcile it in the on chain. But yeah, I guess that shows how truly nascent we still are, and a lot of development, even in thoughts, still need to be processed, before we even get to an advanced stage.
Do you think gaming on blockchain is as big as everyone thinks, bigger, or is it a little overhyped from your point of view?
Actually, I'm not sure how big people think it is. If you
Yeah,
could
you're right.
enlighten us.
I'm
Yeah.
so in the world. I'm like, it's gonna be huge. Like everybody thinks the
Yeah.
next like bull run is gonna be driven by games.
Right. Okay. So, our CTO, he is what I would describe as a true Web3 native, right? So
Okay.
by that I mean it's not just about naming his profile 0x, but he's those kind of crazy developers who thinks that every code should be free for all and everyone should be able to access it, and screw monetization. It's like, yeah, hashtag communism,
Okay.
and and he got into, I think, Bitcoin super early, or the crypto stuff super early, like before 2015, 2014. So that's pretty early.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, like that's super OG, right? So he's older than most of us in the company as well. But I have discussions with him, and he's been through two. This is the second bear market he's been through, and he says, well, third time's a charm, and I think this is the time that shit gets cleaned up. He thinks that the next bull run probably will see a lot more Web2 trying to enter, and because they try to enter, they will have more self-restricted regulation, right? So you might see some cleaner, if not innovative, use cases coming out of that. And he thinks one of the things that might be important is NFT gaming. And why? Two reasons. One is, per what we have mentioned so far, if you think about it, right, what I talked about, game skins, those things really hold value, like that gun still, people would buy it for $200,000. So it's kind of like gold, right? Maybe 10 years is not a lot of time for gaming, or 20 years, but in the tech space, 10, 20 years is a long time to hold value.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, we've always said that, well, blockchain or NFT plus gaming, could it be some degree of real value by legacy, by previous proof, right? Gamers are pretty invested in their items. That's one. The second thing, though, is because of this Web2 people entering, which he talked about. There is an obsession right now within the incumbent space, right? More traditional firms, of gamifying things. Like that's the big buzzword of 2021, 2022, right? And so that might lead to something, right? That you might see these old players coming in trying to enter metaverse and all that stuff. And in the process of it, trying to gamify things. And maybe some emergent innovations will stem from it. And that could be interesting. Now, how much it leads the next bull run, I am not necessarily in agreement with him that blockchain gaming will lead the next bull run, but I think it will have a role to play for sure.
I want to just kind of follow this couple things you said. I really am interested in. I mean, I we've heard the same thing about like GameFi being the next part of like driving the next bull run and everything else. But I mean, I'm guessing you guys would probably make the argument that GameFi has a large opportunity regardless of a bull run. Like the market could stay stable or stay like this, and the technology features that you're getting from the blockchain are irrelevant to token price.
Yeah, I think okay, so it depends on the nuances of the word, right? So some people will speak to anything that's NFT and gaming with crypto, it's like GameFi. Some people don't agree necessarily that it has to be a play to earn model, for example, that it's considered GameFi. So we're not sure of where you guys stand on the definition. We're not too strict on it. But to answer your question, I think if the definition of GameFi is anything that's blockchain plus gaming, then yes, I completely agree with you. I think that even if the bear market persists for very long, there are people who want to develop good games, and if there are good games, there will be value. And then they will probably do well, right? But that do well, that quote unquote do well, may not mean high financial value for the relevant tokens, right? But I mean more adoption, more user awareness, more people entering the space for the fun of it rather than for token value. Now, if you define GameFi as only if it's crypto based, there's some value tied around that, then maybe not, because at least for me, and I think most of the co-founders here share this sentiment, but some don't, which is fine, right? Everyone has their view. My sentiment is that fundamentally, if you give out too much financial reward in games, right, rather than focusing on the gameplay, even if the gameplay is fantastic, right, it is hard to maintain a passion for the game because you start to tie the value of it to the financial value. You know, similar to how YouTubers, a lot of them who are successful today, did it out of passion at the start, right? Something that they're interested in topics, but eventually, well, 2-3 years later, especially when they're successful and posting every other day, it comes the the video. It's like a rite of passage video. Guys, I'm burnt out. I'm taking a 2-month break.
Right.
So why are you burnt out by your passion? Well, it's because whenever there's like numbers to look at, dashboards to look at, and it affects your pocket, that passion starts to shift, right? And on the game level, that could be dangerous if the focus is too much on the money. And that's why I like to talk about Steppen versus Sweatcoin, of course. Again, time will tell how it plays out. I hope Sweatcoin doesn't get greedy. I like that they're partnered with like governmental agencies like UK National Health. I think that's a good sign. But yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to bring up at this point that we haven't talked about that you think is important?
We are actually really inspired in some sense as gamers, right? We are actually trying to solve for like I wouldn't say a millennia long problem, but I don't know if Joe and Jared, have you played games when you were like younger, like computer games?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing that I always ask my friends, right, is that, so you've been playing game for like 10, 20 years now. So who knows what games do you play? Where's the record?
Yeah.
It's all gone.
Right.
It's all gone, right? It's all gone. And it's actually an issue that, we've spent so much time. And even though that, we play these games for fun, wouldn't it be nice to have like a record of it somewhere on a ledger, somewhere in an NFT, somewhere that we can keep track of? Doesn't matter which technology it is. But the truth is that each time a game moves on and like passes on and the servers die, all records are lost. Right? You can have them in your paper, you can have them in your mind, but no one really knows and no one really remembers. What we are trying to create is NFT that when you connect with it, it allows you to mint all the achievements, all the legacy that you have on existing servers that still run. Example, Steam, pull an API, drag all your achievements and like, hey, whoa, wait. Then now you can look at Joe like, hey, I didn't know you play Counter-Strike. We're partners, but I didn't even know you played it. Wait. Since when do you get that badge, right? And it reflects on your PFP. So people know it. Like, as a gamer, when I look at another guy, I'm like, wait, you play this game? Like, because it's not really a social thing for like one gamer to tell the other, like, or go around the parties, hey, do you know that I play this? Do you know I play that? It's not that common thing, right?
Right.
And we wanted to make that like more common. That's one thing that we're doing. So Project Arcana is, in my own means, a meaningful use of soulbound tokens and NFTs in general, because it's provably yours. Like, you can't like go to another account and say like, hey, this guy is mine, this guy is mine, when it's not really yours, or this achievement is not really yours, right? And it's a step in the right direction, in my opinion, of using only what is made available in blockchain. That's why it's really something we can do, compared to like other projects who, if you're building a brand, to be fair, what do you need an NFT for? Like, the physical product is not related to it, and there's no real tie-in. We wanted to innovate in a right direction so that we can say, hey, the utility is different. I think there is no such use case for gaming yet, and we want to be the first. Also because we have the heritage of working in Promisphere, having all the game partners that sort of enable the future movement. Ideally, we'll be able to connect with them, etc. I think that's what drove the initial idea of Arcana, more so than...
I mean, just to give some context, Arcana was a side project that Stanley was running, because I was the one focused on platform building with our CTO. We're super lean. Like, there's him and one senior software engineer that we great guy that we got from Vietnam, who built some like a crypto wallet, one of the crypto wallets in Singapore.
Nice.
He was involved with that. And it's just 3 of us plus one UI UX part-time, and we're building that. And then Stanley was going, man, where do I step into all of this? And I'm kind of a control freak, so it's kind of my fault. So he said, I'm do this side project. We could build up a community around that. It'd be pretty cool. And I think, thank heavens he did that, because like I mentioned, the market situation now, we have our platform white like kind of a alpha ready, but our investors don't think we should launch it. And I agree, because it's such a lukewarm market. You don't want the negative associations. That's number one. 2 is, we don't necessarily have the guild manpower right now to support it, even if there are people who are interested. So it makes no sense, right? Because we need this transitionary phase where there's internal support before I make it like an open market kind of system. So now we're kind of all hands on deck on Arcana. And I think what Stan shared is the main piece of utility that they thought of, right, to do this. And they found partners for that. But on a bigger picture, I think this is something that Stan communicates to me pretty often, right? It's like, how do you unlock the power of gamers? How do you unlock a true gaming community? Because it's pretty diverse and dispersed, and that's the word right now, because gamers are playing across genres. Like sports gamers are quite different from, let's say, FPS gamers, from mobile gamers, from RPG gamers. But at its core, we're inspired by very similar things, like sense of accomplishment, overcoming challenges, right? Pride in our achievements, so on and so forth, experiences. And one of the things we want to do is, how do we tie them together? How do you essentially, for that specific project at least, have kind of like a validated gamer resume, right? You see people on LinkedIn post stuff like, oh, I'm so glad to be starting my master's in XYZ program. Oh, I'm so glad to be promoted. You know, like this sort of soft flex. I don't necessarily like it, but I get why people do it. You know, everyone likes to have a sense of pride. And why not give gamers a sense of pride as a starting point? Then, of course, we plan for much more utilities.
I mean, one of the ideal ways that we really want to reward gamers, right? If you've been playing 10, 20 years of your life, if you think about it, you have contributed to the evolution of gaming. And you're right. Remember, you mentioned something along the lines of like, if we are giving a lot of value, where are the consumers getting the value from, right? If they contributed so much. And we think that it might be good because what we're doing is this. If you've been playing shooting games your whole life, what kind of value can you expect to have with us? What can we do for you? Is that, what if we partner with games, right? And games will be like, hey, there's this guy, he's been playing shooting game for 20 years. And rather than giving alpha or your whitelist or your NFT assets to a random influencer that doesn't even play your game, or random people to shout on Twitter, why don't you give this guy? I mean, he's going to play your game, right? And it makes so much sense. What does the game need when they start? They need insights. They need people to actually play the game, not people who buy the assets to flip it. Yeah, play testing is actually a very important part. But where are they going to find these people? And what if we could provide that solutions? Like, we have verified that this guy has been playing Counter-Strike for 20 years of his life. He has no life, literally. And he's going to be no life for you too.
Right.
And to the gamer, it's like, hey, I got this access. Wait, I got this airdrop too. Wait, the gaming space is finally giving back to me. And I think this is one of the beauty of like Web3 and how the whole notion of community building and creation together with the games has been going on. And it's something we really want to reward, like long-term or long-time gamers as a way, something like that.
And here's where I think this is a really good idea, because NFTs, there's a lot of Ponzi and stuff, but I think the idea of an NFT can be leveraged very powerfully, because Web 2 is completely driven by ads and advertising and marketing and churning and feeding the beast and selling stuff. Web 3 doesn't have that. So there's being creative ways to market concepts. And I think an NFT, leveraged the way you're talking right now, is a really good use in, I don't want to say marketing, but exposure. And when an NFT rewards the holder and also the other person, you're creating super fans, which is almost like the ideal marketing structure in Web.
Yeah. There's actually a word in that in traditional marketing, brand evangelist.
Yep, brand evangelist.
Brand evangelist.
Yeah,
like free brand evangelist.
Yeah, but it's not free, because you're rewarding them. Like, you can do airdrops. You could be like, oh, you're the best single shooter out there. Boom, here's a special gun for you for having 20 years. Let's go. Now you've got that software. It's
exactly.
I think it's and then the fact that you guys have that, it's almost like this bear market gave you a silver lining. Is like, now you've got this NFT happening, which could then build up like brand evangelists. You've got the guild. So once games start going on your platform, Promisphere, you've got the guild players who can be playing that, having the NFT. Then you can have the content generation giving awareness and exposure to everybody. Awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I
just
just
together very well. Yes.
Am I on like the right path? Like the whole, like, I just am like a very curious person in this podcast. Once I like start with a project and then the end, I'm like, I think I get it a little bit.
Yeah. No. I think things are definitely clicking in the right direction. You get exactly what we want to do. We see like the NFT project now as a community play, which in the future, once we launch things, can be funnels. And then we are also thinking of we don't review too much on this, but co-creation and allowing our holders to enjoy the success of the company in certain ways. Of course, this will be much longer term because I think one big part of co-creation is having the right systems and structures in place so that it doesn't end up creating an abomination. Because often kinds happen, right? Too many cooks spoil the soup. So that will be longer term, but that is actually the dream that we're heading towards longer term, and that's why we're called Promisphere actually. So we think of it as it was a rebrand, right? It started out as Prominence Games, kind of like a guild internal thing, but we even changed the name Promisphere when we dreamed up this idea of how can we guide blockchain gaming towards better development so that we can really get all the good of blockchain technology in terms of application to gaming, which is not here right now, right? So we look at it as that's the promised land, that's the promise dimension, that's the Promisphere.
Promisphere, gotcha.
Yeah, that's how it came about actually. Yeah. So you might wonder like what the crap does that mean? That's what we're thinking at first. Like, that makes sense, you know.
Nice.
But that's kind of the vision that we're walking towards.
Awesome stuff. I really love this idea with the NFT too, because it's not necessarily like a financially based reward.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's so often overlooked. Like you said, like you have these, essentially like free brand evangelists. Like, I mean, people who are really in love with the game, like they'll talk about it to everyone who will listen, and they're not getting anything in return. And like you said, if it's something that you're passionate about, you're spending that time anyways. And I'll tell you, like, something simple like, you send me the free access to something, or I feel like I'm special because I've been acknowledged. Again, I don't need money, but just to be acknowledged is super powerful for people. So to give them that connection. And then I also love the potential and this nostalgia piece of being able to, like, because I can't remember everything I've ever played. I would love to be able to go back and see, like, oh my God, I can't believe I played that game 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
actually, I mean, not to spoil things, but there's much more than just this kind of resume for gamers project, right? There's going to be much more, and some of them, to be fair, are somewhat financial rewards, maybe tangible, physical things that will be given out, not money for sure, because we don't want it to be a churn play, right? I think that's like pure financial play, and I love what Joe talked about, which is people want to be acknowledged, people want to get what they want, and oftentimes that need not be money, right? And you guys know about like In-N-Out Burger, right? You guys are from the East Coast, so yeah, okay, great, awesome. Sometimes people from the East Coast are like, nah, In-N-Out, that's a West crap thing, right? But no, so In-N-Out, I think they had an exercise where the management were trying to say, how do we reward our employees, right? And instead of giving them cash bonuses, they ask them like, what do you guys want, right? This is a real thing, by the way. And they say, we want the hat. We want the hat, and we want to take it home because they love the paper In-N-Out hat. And like, give it to them. And then morale was like through the roof for a few days just because of that.
Yeah.
And I think humans are beautifully strange creatures. Oftentimes you don't know exactly what you want, but when you know you want something in that moment and you get it, it's a beautiful sensation, right? And if you think about it, like probably we're quite far from it, but eventually when let's say in gaming, right, all the data is captured in the blockchain, and we can predictively say this player who has played X amount of games in this many genres would really, really enjoy this next game, or really, really enjoy this new skin. And that's kind of a brilliant reward to give to people who have been supporting your game, for example. So we never know. Hopefully that it turns out that way. That's something to aspire towards. But yeah. And another thing that I think the previous line that inspired, or rather reminded me of, was internally when we talk with some other colleagues within the company, because not all of them necessarily believe in the full vision. They believe in what we're doing, but certain things are like, I tell you very honestly, right? In this space, the temptation of quick money is always there, right? Because how ridiculous it is. Yeah. And oftentimes I told them things like, look, you know what's really stupid about the way some parts of the NFT community is behaving now? So you can have a great project, you launch it, but you under-deliver, or you didn't deliver to the expectation. And then people start going, what the hell? When Lambo, right? Yeah. And you see so many project founders, they give up, right? Or they just, okay, forget it. I've had my 2 million, 3 million, I'm out, right? I don't deal with this. I think what is very sad is that people forget about one part of the core construct of NFTs. Today, in the traditional world, let's say, I don't know, I sell chairs, right? I sell chairs. And, no, let's talk about iPhones, right? Let's say you sell iPhones and everyone in the world has an iPhone already. What are you going to do? you need to make a new iPhone, right? That's better. But not everyone is going to buy the new iPhone in next year. Maybe they'll buy 3 generations down, 4 generations down. And that's kind of like a business problem. The difference with NFTs is you can just upgrade the existing product, right? Because you can keep delivering. You can keep delivering things that were not promised and good quality utility things specifically for your community. In the traditional business, it makes no sense for Apple to just airdrop iPhone number 2 to the customers because you don't get financially rewarded. But with NFTs, you do. Why? Because you can build in systems which say, okay, in a smart contract, every time this is transacted, I get 5-10%, right? A fair amount. Don't make it too much, make it a fair amount. But what that means is whenever you deliver and keep up your promises and live to the roadmap or even give more and do things that people like, the value, the perceived value of an NFT goes up. Over time, people make higher offer prices. It transacts and you're rewarded for your effort as the entity behind it. I think that is one of the most beautiful, beautiful things about this technology as a system, especially when everyone is using it mostly as a kind of like a club access thing. And that's the irony, right? If you just keep improving, you'll transact, you'll be rewarded, but people give up because the upfront money is too attractive.
Right.
Dude, you just broke down the NFT landscape really well there. Awesome.
I mean, maybe it stems from a lot of personal frustrations as to why people are not moving in a better direction. But yeah.
All right. Well, Joe, do you have any more questions?
No, I mean, no, I'm really excited to catch up again in like 6 months to see where you guys are at, because I really like what you guys are trying to do here. This is very interesting.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, for sure. We love to catch up also, even if we've messed up, and our ideals didn't make it. We'll tell you why it didn't make it, and then hopefully someone walks away with a good lesson and tries to enact the ideals that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, regardless.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you both, Art and Stanley, and we really look forward to Promisphere and how it grows, and we'll hopefully talk to you all again.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Stay in touch. Thanks, Jared.
Stay in
Thanks,
touch.
Joe.
All the best for your podcast, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
It's been an awesome session. Thanks.
It's been an
Have a good
awesome
one.
time, guys. Cheers.
Ready Layer 1 is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. You should not make any decision, financial investment, trading, or otherwise based on any of the information presented in this podcast without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or financial advisory.